Americans very shortly heading to the polls to elect either Donald Trump or Kamala Harris as their next president.
So, let's go back to Susanna and Ed in Washington, D.C. How is it looking there?
Well, it's an interesting mood here in Washington, D.C. I have to be honest, it is 1:30 in the morning, so you'd expect it to be quiet and still. But a couple of hours ago, we came in from the airport, and there is something a little chilling about the fact that just ordinary shops, we saw a pharmacy boarded up. Other places are having their windows covered in case there is any protest that turns violent. We know that barricades have been put up outside of the White House because this is all about Trump, isn't it? Either Trump wins or if Trump loses, the concern is that his supporters will turn. And we stand here this morning in Washington, D.C. with the Capitol building lit up behind us, between us, and it casts a long shadow, the events of January the 6th, 2021, when Trump supporters refused to accept the outcome of the November 2020 election, refused to believe that Trump hadn't won the election. And that is the fear. And you're getting the sense, aren't you, Ed, that Donald Trump is laying the ground, potentially, for a kind of stop the steal part 2?
Look, this is a city where there's always been demonstrations, there's always been protests. There's for decades been people outside the White House complaining about one issue or another. But, you know, I've been coming here for 30 years. This is different. I've never seen big shops and buildings boarded up because it's not about normal protests. It's about people worrying you'd see a repeat of those riots we saw at the Capitol building. And, you know, there are, I think, worries that both sides could be angry. It's not clear that all of the anger would be on the Trump side if Trump loses. But there is a palpable sense. It's quiet today because the activity of polling day is not happening in Washington, D.C. It's happening in the swing states around the country. But the day after the election, if things are contested, if there's anger, suddenly all the focus would come here. And who knows, let's hope not. But I think there are Americans I talk to who, compared to, you know, 5, 10, 20, 30 years ago, now worry, is this democracy secure? Is this a place which is now so riven and divided that things could really break apart? And, you know, in a very ordinary way, we saw the signs of that. Washington, D.C. boarding up for potential riots in America.
It is so tight, this race. It's impossible to call at this stage. And so every single vote needs to come out for either candidate. And we saw the rallies going on into the early hours overnight. And if you're watching... I know.
I mean, thousands of people at a Harris and Trump rally at 10 to midnight.
And if you're watching television, it is wall-to-wall political ads. And they have a very particular nature. They are vicious, they're negative, they are attack ads from each side. They're pretty unpleasant to watch.
Goodness. At the end of her rally, when we fight, we win. There's a lot of fighting talk. And, you know, there's an edge to language of fighting in America at the moment.
There's no clear winner either. Very interesting what Donald Trump was saying at his rally in Michigan, one of the swing states. Every vote needs to get out in order to win that. Because he made a comparison, no surprise, with Britain's great wartime leader, Winston Churchill. But an unusual take on that comparison.
That's right, because he wasn't actually talking about Churchill, a war leader, Churchill, a reformer, Churchill, a guy who broke the mould. It was Churchill, the stammerer. And Donald Trump was complaining about misunderstanding his stutter and comparing himself to Winston Churchill. Look, can we hear a sort of what Donald Trump was saying at that rally?
No, when Winston Churchill, he was a great speaker, he was actually a stutterer, a tremendous stutterer, and he became one of the greatest orators. But when Winston Churchill made a mistake, he didn't go, excuse me, and go back. He just blazed through it. But if I do it, they say, he's cognitively impaired. There's something wrong with him. These people are sick. Those people, look at them.
of course, the great irony, the famous stutterer of American politics, Joe Biden, who Donald Trump regularly mocks for his speaking style, but now Donald Trump is saying, hang on a sec, I'm being unfairly judged for my stutter too. And there is a kind of a style in the Trump language. He kind of like elongates his vowels. He sort of kind of expands his speech, blurs words. That is classic stuttering practice as a way of keeping going, of not allowing the stutter to throw him off course. And, you know, it's the first time that I've ever seen Donald Trump exposing a bit of vulnerability.
And it's the first time that you've realised you have something in common with Donald Trump.
Well, I know this is a bit of a, I don't know,
revelation.
Even told revelation. It was not what I was expecting.
I've fallen off my perch as a result.
Kind of, you know, you fell backwards in shock. Anyway, there we are, Donald Trump, the stutterer, asking for a bit of sympathy.
Yes, whereas he would, as you say, exploit it in anyone else. So the polls have already opened in one particular tiny part of New Hampshire, and they open in Vermont, I do believe, in just around 3.25 hours. And the weather looks like it's going to be pretty good for everyone apart from two swing states where it could favour the Republicans.
Well, Michigan and Wisconsin are two states which Kamala Harris really wants to win if she's going to win this election. So, as Laura was saying, a bit of rain, lower turnout, helps the Republicans. You know, you heard it here first.
Back to you in the studio in London.
You are so right, the two of you, to talk about the way this is absolutely about the politics of the personal as it comes down to the wire. Watching Trump's speech about an hour ago, I never thought I'd see a man who wanted to be president of the United States of America spend 2 minutes debating with his audience whether or not to call his opponent, Kamala Harris, the B word. He just went on and on and on about, can I call her that? Can I call her the but, no, shall I? And the audience whooping and laughing. I thought, it's come to this. That's his best shot.
He's still going, by the way. There he is there, still going. That's him. Those are live pictures of Donald Trump still speaking. Andrew Pearce and the Mirror's Kevin Crowe are here, as you just saw. What are your feelings about this? Are you gripped? Are you anxious? Are you going to be up all night? You know, what are your thoughts?
Well, get the first woman or a fascist, you mean? I mean, which is what the choice comes down when he's called a fascist by his former generals and officials. It's not people on the left calling it, it's people who worked with him the last time.
It'll certainly be the first convicted felon, won't it? So either the first woman or the first convicted felon.
He'd be the first former president to come back since, I think, 1893 or something. There'd be all these firsts. I am gripped by it. I think it's an extraordinary election. I think the Democrats, if he wins, they've got only themselves to blame because they should have dealt with the Biden issue a year ago.
Absolutely.
He clearly had serious
Do you
cognitive
not
issues.
think she's wiped that away? They've kept him hidden.
Well, he gave a very late start.
I think if they got rid of him, if they'd sorted it out a year ago, they'd have had a stronger candidate. I don't think she's a strong candidate. I think she's a very weak candidate.
But I'd vote for her and against him, and I'd vote against him for lots of reasons, but the primary one is he's not a Democrat in the small d, in that he falsely claims he lost the last election when he didn't, and he may not accept the result of this one. But the choice, I think the choice is, I think she summed it up quite nicely. It's whether you see your neighbour as an enemy or a friend. He sees them as enemies, she wants to see them as friends. Whether you want to beat people down as he does, or whether you want to raise people up like she does. It's quite a simple choice for America. I don't think she's a great candidate, I agree.
What about the situation for us? Because you called Donald Trump a fascist.
The Labour Party former generals who work for him call him a fascist.
The UK government has called him all sorts of things. Odious, sociopath, absolute moron. And that's relatively recently. So if Trump does win, and we know it's on a knife edge, where are we?
He's incredibly thin-skinned, and he won't have forgotten those insults. And we have to remember, Trump only in September said tariffs are the greatest thing that were ever invented. There will be a trade war with the rest of the world. He'll put tariffs on everything, and that will include British products.
That'll hit the economy.
For sure.
There is also the fact he could well gift wrap Ukraine for Putin, because he's got big question marks.
What you mean, because he won't sign off funding?
Yeah. And so that would hit us. If he does that, then the Chinese might Xi Jinping might think, right, now's the time to grab Taiwan because he's not going to act. He's abusing all his neighbours, particularly Mexico. How's that going to play out when he threatens to fire missiles at so-called drug labs in another country? What will happen with Iran? Will he go incredibly confrontational? And if he does, that could spark a wider bloody conflict and certainly economic chaos, given how much of the world's oil passes through that area. Yeah. So it's look, he's unpredictable. He's a loose cannon, and that is a danger.
We're going to be talking to the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, a bit later, and you talk about these comments that have been made. Listen how he talked about Trump. He said, Trump is an odious, sad little man. Imagine being proud to have that as your president. And he went on to say later, he's just a horrible, horrible man. He's racist and he's heartless. Now, whether you agree or disagree with that, as you say, if he edges it, if he wins, he's going to be not talking to our front benches.
It's well, look, and the Foreign Secretary, of course, who'll be dealing a lot. He's the one who called Trump
a woman-hating, neo-Nazi, sympathising sociopath and a profound threat to the international order. Hello, Mr. President. Congratulations on your victory.
And he is our diplomat-in-chief. I mean, it's a worry because, of course, in opposition you can say what you like, but
you know what happens
comes back
now
to haunt you.
Is with David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, who called him a woman-hating, sociopathic, Ku Klux Klan supporting racist. They backtrack. It'll be interesting to see if Wes Streeting sticks to his words or he backtracks.
Well,
he backtracks. I prefer that Wes Streeting to the new Wes Streeting.
He has to backtrack.
But J.D. Vance is sorry.
No,
J.D. Vance, his vice presidential candidate, also used really angry, colourful language against him. And
now they're best mates running on the same ticket.
And I think he's going to win.
Do you?
I do.
You're staking your cards here, are you?
I've got my gut instinct he's going to win.
Have you found, both of you, have you found yourselves flip-flopping so much in the last few months? I mean, after the failed assassination attempt, the first one when he was hit in the ear, I thought, well, that's it, he's going to win. And then it all seemed to fade for him. And then, frankly, I was saying, I think Kamala's going to edge it now. I think and in just the last few days, I'm with you. I think she peaked. I think she peaked too soon. I also don't think she's incapable. She was incapable of spelling out what she's going to do, how she's different to Biden. And she was just in her last speech. She was saying about the last decade.
I was going to say I followed Richard's journey, but I think I'm just wondering now whether she will actually squeak it as people get in the ballot box and they think, do we want to go back to the chaos, the anger and the bile of Trump? Not a big vote for her, but a vote against him. But it may be that's just what I want.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, look, I'm going to stop you talking, but not to stop you talking, just to come to domestic matters a bit, because we're going to be talking a lot about the US election, aren't we, in this show? Definitely tomorrow when we're live for the whole show in Washington with Susanna and Ed. We were talking about Wes Streeting. We will put his comments about Donald Trump to him when he's on the programme after 8 o'clock. Other things, though, which people really care about is dentistry. Now, we're talking to a woman, Jackie Nicholson, also after 8, who was so desperate. She was so desperate because she'd waited 2 years to try and get an NHS dentist that she fell victim of a scam that looked very believable. So we're going to hear her story because there's a warning there. But wider speaking, there is total desperation. And despite the promises of new appointments from the Labour government pre-election, there wasn't much detail in the budget of how that was going to happen, was there?
And dentistry, I mean, people say free at the point of delivery of the NHS. It hasn't been like that in dentistry for years.
Yeah.
And the crisis in dentistry has been going... It started 20 years ago and it's got much worse. So many dentists move into the private sector. It's very hard to get a new NHS appointment, and it's a real problem.
What about
kids
this,
in particular?
An extra 700,000 urgent and emergency dental appointments was promised by Sir Keir Starmer and the Labour Party, and a flooding of the dental deserts. Where's the plan for that?
Yeah, well, when does it start?
Yeah.
If you got toothache, you want it dealt with now, right? Yeah. They've inherited a huge problem from the last lot, but you want to see the plan for how you're going to quickly start to address it, because it does become your problem. Now, you have inherited, you can blame them for that, for the problem, but Yeah, it's your responsibility in government. How are you going to resolve it and make it better?
Yeah. We ought to say that later in the programme today we'll be talking about, you know, the vultures move in when these situations exist. And the vultures are on the internet now with these incredibly convincing websites which are saying we will give you an emergency NHS dental appointment. Yeah. They're total scams. Of course, they want money up front, and people are falling for them in their thousands.
Because they're
We're going to be warning you about that later. But to bring it back to politics, British politics, we've got an emerging new shadow cabinet. I mean, until 2 or 3 days ago, Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick were at each other's throats, and now he's accepted the role as Shadow Justice Secretary. Priti Patel is coming back. She's going to be the Shadow Foreign Secretary. Mel Stride, Shadow Chancellor. What do we make of the appointment so far?
Underwhelmed.
Well, but I think Mel Stride's an interesting point. He was virtually the minister he was put up. He was probably on this programme more than any other minister during the general election campaign. Yeah. If he walked into a crowded room, most people wouldn't recognise him or know him. He's safe, pair of hands and dependable, but perhaps that's what you need in that role.
Priti Patel.
I think it's really good that she's back. She's
she
a proper
was,
Tory.
Of the first
outspoken.
6, she was first out.
Yeah.
Wasn't she?
She resigned, didn't she?
She was sacked by Theresa May when she was International Development
That's right, yeah.
Minister for a freelance trip to Israel and visiting the Golan Heights. And
it was kind of like almost like a sort of a second foreign office.
It was.
And now she's got it.
I know.
In shadow.
And remember, her flight back to be sacked was tracked on the net, waiting to land to be... The truth is, it's not very expiring because these are all people who've been round the block. I like Mel Stride as a person. His politics are very different to Badenoch. Yes, a different wing. Now, does that mean she's going to move because you would think, going to take them to the right?
No, it's a cabinet of all the talents. Well, cabinet of all the talents.
You know what it is? It's a cabinet making do because they've got so few MPs. That's what it is.
Well, that's the other point.
You have 100 positions to appoint. There's only 121 of them.
I know. And 4 or 5 of them have already said thank you, but we don't want a job.
Thank you and goodbye. Good night.
Super quickly, can I have a quick word about tuition fees?
Unbelievable.
A U-turn.
U-turn if you want to. Labour again.
Because promised, you know, that would actually remove the fees, wouldn't it? At one point when he was campaigning.
But also,
for the first time in 8 years. But who is this pleasing? Because it seems to be like a one-off thing for a year. So that doesn't allow the universities to plan.
The Education Secretary said in July, just a couple of days before the election, we will not raise in tuition fees.
Yeah.
Universities have been lobbying for a long time for a lift. It's been frozen for 8 years. The Tories would have raised it as well. I regret Labour has increased it. I think we just need a bigger, thorough look.
Well, what do you make of the U-turn? 4 years ago, Starmer said these tuition fees are insupportable. I will abolish them.
They have to go.
They're going up.
4 years ago, he was going to renationalise water, electricity and gas.
It means
of course, I'm despairing because I would have liked all that to go ahead.
Students are going to leave university with debts of £45,000 to £50,000. Do they just not want students to go to university?
It's still worth going, though. It's still worth going because you will earn more throughout your life.
But the stats show that.
But I had a free university.
Don't forget when you have Wes Streeting on. He's a former head of the National Union of Students who hate this U-turn.